Good morning, my magnificent ones. Sue Paulson here, your magnificence mentor with the healing call of cancer. I grew up in a world of have-tos and shoulds. And in order for me to survive and get through, it seemed as if I better follow those have-tos and shoulds. Now, of course, when I was little, all of this was an unconscious way of being because I wasn't even aware of the power of words as such. I just did what I was told because I knew if I didn't do what I was told, I would be in big trouble. So you have to go to school. You have to get good marks. You have to wash the dishes. You have to look after your brothers. You should do better in this, that, or the other thing. You should call your grandmother. You should write thank you notes when you get birthday presents. And it, and of course, the implied idea was that if I didn't do all of these things, then somehow bad things were going to happen. I was not going to measure up. Well, of course, it was all based on expectations of the people who were in charge of me, of my parents, of my teachers, of my other relatives, of authority figures, and on and on and on. And isn't that kind of the way our world has focused, is this, well, you have to do certain things. You have to obey the laws. You should look after this, that, and the other thing. Well, as I grew, at one point in my 20s, this unconscious falling into the pattern of doing what I felt was required of me was kind of blown apart by an exercise where we began exploring the meaning behind those words and someone questioning me and said, well, why should you do that? Well, because, you know, if I don't do that, okay, if you don't do that, then what would happen? Well, I should work for a living. Okay, well, really? What if you didn't work for a living? Well, I might starve. And well, if I starve, I might die. And so there was this critical thinking that went on, and I was pushed to open up to what the meaning of the words that I was using, what was the meaning, what was the intent or the implication for me. And at the end of it, I'm going, whoa, maybe I don't have to do anything. Maybe it would be good if I stopped shoulding all the time. And particularly shoulding on myself. Oh, now, Sue, you should be doing this. You should be going here. You should be blah, 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 blah. And this little, you know, the monkey part of the brain going rah, 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 rah. And so, of course, once I became consciously aware of the impact of all the shoulds and the have-tos, I started to really think things through and begin to place a different kind of value on all of that. So we'll get to that part in a minute. In the meantime, what did this mean in my life as I was being burdened and burdened and burdened and burdened and further burdened by all these have-tos, all these shoulds? Because as I went from a single person to a married person, there were more shoulds and have-tos than I had had before. Then when we started a family, oh my goodness, there were a lot more shoulds and have-tos than ever before. And this whole idea from that I was increasingly struggling to measure up, that it felt as if I was never going to improve enough. And yet there was this compulsion to, well, I have to be better. I should do better. I should read this book. I should take this course. I should, do whatever is necessary in order to measure up, whether it was in my business, in my personal life. It didn't really matter. There were all of these shoulds, which inevitably not only sucked the joy out of life, but it sucked the joy out of me. And I became what I would call puny. All right. I became weak and small. And it was like the essence of me, the essence that is magnificent, the essence that's magnificent in you and in me. Well, that essence began to shrink because it got overshadowed by all of whatever it was that I felt, well, I have to do this. I can't just take time for myself. And there's the other word, can't, right? That one popped up big time too. So these three words, should, have to, and can't. And the suggestion in my 20s was eliminate those words from your vocabulary. Well, I didn't even know I was thinking them or saying them as often as I was until the awareness hit. And then I'm going, holy crap, I use that a lot. Is that serving me? That was the big question. Is that serving me? Because let's face it, we have free will on this planet. We came in with free will. There's really nothing we have to do or be, literally. It's a choice. And when we look at the difference between the have to and choose to, there's a big difference in the resistance factor, right? 9 times out of 10, if I say I have to do something, I'm resisting it. There's a part of me that's saying, why? I don't want to. But if I say, well, I choose to, then I might say, I wonder why I'm choosing that. Well, if I choose to, it gives me an option. It gives me a reason that makes me less resistant to doing something, especially if it's out of my comfort zone. So starting these videos is a really good example of that. I was resistant for quite a long time because I felt as if there was a part of me said, well, so you have to do that. And I'm going, no, I don't want to. And so I had enough resistance that I didn't do anything about it for a long, long time for a variety of reasons. I was scared to be in front of the camera to start with. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I had anything to say that was worthwhile. And I doubted my own level of contribution in the world. Well, would it make any difference to anybody else? So there was all of those pieces of resistance that came in. But there was a point in time where it became more important to me that the value of this contribution rose higher and higher to the point where pretty soon I'm saying, well, no, I don't have to do them. But what if I choose to? What if I choose to step into an arena that I'm not that comfortable with? I don't know that much about as far as the technical part and the whole video thing and so on. But what if? And it changed the dynamic of how I move forward. So when I think of how burdened I was previously, because I was unaware that these words were having power over me, the words and the actions that I took as a result. And interestingly, the resentment that built up because I wasn't doing a whole lot just for me. I wasn't taking care of me. And so all of this built up to the point where then I'm mad, I'm angry, and I'm feeling bitter about being left out of the equation. I'm doing all this stuff for everybody else and doing what I'm told to do or what I feel obliged to do, and nothing for what served me, what nourished me, what fed my soul. Oh boy, is that a breeding ground for dis-ease? Yes. And so it became a huge breeding ground for me, even though I knew better in my 20s, because I'd become aware of this and I had worked diligently to stop saying, I have to, I should, I can't. Then life kind of swamped my boat for a number of years. And even though I wasn't saying the words anymore, I was still taking on that burden of responsibility with a have to and a should, and I can't look after myself because there's all these other people that need my attention. I'm too busy to sit in the sunshine and let the sunbeams bathe my face. I'm all of these reasons that seemed so compelling at the time and so much more important than I was. And then cancer gives this little wake-up call, and I'm going, oh, well, I mean, it stopped me in my tracks. It flat out stopped me in my tracks. And I went from fiercely independent to dependent and on certain days, helpless. That was a bad feeling. That shift and that contrast really hit home. And as I began to explore that and say, what just happened here? What's really going on here? I realized that I had allowed the way I was thinking and the reason for why I was acting the way I was, out of a sense of obligation, had contributed to making me feel smaller and smaller and weaker and weaker and weaker, to the point where I didn't have much defense against this eating away of me that had started long before the cancer diagnosis. You know, there were pieces of me that were just gobbled up by this burden of should, and it didn't serve me. So fortunately, I came awake again. You know, we can wake up and then go to sleep, wake up, and go to sleep. Well, so what's the antidote? You know, how do we get out of that? Well, one of the exercises that I worked with was to write down all of my shoulds, all of my have tos, all of my can'ts. Every time they occurred to me, I kept a pen and paper close by, and I'd be thinking about doing some particular thing. And then I'd question, so I'd write it down. Oh, I should start dinner. Oh yeah, oh, what am I gonna cook? I didn't want to, but I should, it's time, you know, we have to eat, have to. See how easy that comes about? Well, I wrote them down, and then I'd question them, and then I'd say, well, let me just back up a second here and say, why do I have to start dinner? So there was a point in when my son was a teenager, and I didn't want to cook. I didn't feel like cooking. I was not motivated in any shape, way, or form. So I created Fend for Yourself night. I said, well, I don't feel like cooking. I don't know what to cook. So whatever you can find in the fridge or cupboards, help yourselves and go for it. And now it's a little tricky to do that guilt-free at first, but I got so that I thought there's nothing wrong with having everyone else be responsible for the hunger in their stomachs and looking after that themselves. So, and the end result, the beautiful end result of that was that my son became a darn good cook. And so when I go over and he makes a meal, I'm going, oh, this is so good. Well, if I hadn't turned over that responsibility at some point, he may never have grabbed hold to that. So I did a good thing by, quote, selfishly saying, no, I'm not cooking tonight. It's fend for yourself night. So, and we're busy, let's face it, in this world we've created for ourselves, we're on the go a lot. And so the turning over some of those responsibilities, which end up feeling like burdens, can be a very freeing experience, and then gives that responsibility for someone else to choose, okay, how am I going to deal with that? Mom's not cooking, and so how am I going to deal with that? And then it goes from there. So that was the first thing I did, was to be very open to when those kinds of thoughts jumped into my head, when I was shoulding, when I was half toing, when I was I canting, and examined it, explored it, and chose differently, and said, no, it's not that I can't do it, I don't want to. It's not the right time. It doesn't fit for me. It's, no, I'm not doing that. And it isn't that I don't have the ability. I do. I don't want to do it. And when we admit that to ourselves, when we're honest about that, well, you should call your parents. Well, I don't want to. I'm watching a TV program right now that's more interesting to me than talking on the phone to my parents. And you go, oh, well, that's blasphemy. You shouldn't be doing that. Shouldn't. See, there it is again. So, wow, what, it's insanity. It's a madness that can consume us until we start to wake up. And then it's your choice, right? You can choose to work your way out of that and do something different. You can choose differently, or you can stay in the insanity. I mean, it's your choice. Let me tell you though, when I stayed there for as long as I did, my body eventually told me, it eventually said, this is not the way for you to live, Sue. You're not living, you're just existing. And in fact, you're suffering. So cancer for me was a way to reset. It was a way to explore what got me into that mess in the first place, and then how I was going to work my way out of it. And when I stopped not only thinking the words and saying the words, but stopped acting on the shoulds, the have-tos, and the can'ts, then I got my choice back, and gradually my power came back. I began to feel stronger. I began to assert myself in a different way. And so I guess the second thing that followed as I stopped what I was doing before is I began to examine the value that I placed on myself, other people, on things, on activities, on experiences. And then my choices became easier, because the higher the value that I placed on something in any given moment, you know, our values can change. One moment we might value a piece of chocolate cake more than a carrot stick. And then at some point we might say, actually, I value the carrot stick now more than the piece of cake. So the choice becomes easy then. Well, I'll have the carrot stick instead of the piece of cake. Even though I really love cake, let's take the carrot stick, because the value is higher. So it's as simple as that. I value phoning my folks because I enjoy hearing the sounds of their voices. They live far away. They're in California, and I'm here in Alberta. And so to make contact with them, and because I'm not able to see them as often as I would like in you know, face to face, then that connection becomes important. So I turn off the TV and phone them. I don't feel I have to. I do it because I want to, because it has meaning for me, it gives me pleasure, and on from there. So that gives us a shift. that gives us an opportunity to work our way out of the bogged down sense that we get. And let's face it, when we feel burdened and burdened and burdened and burdened, then it makes it hard to carry through our days, because this sack of obligations turns into like a dump truck. Well, I don't know if you've ever tried to tow a dump truck with you walking in front, pulling on the rope, but I'm going to tell you, it likely isn't going to, you're not going to go very far. You probably won't even go 1 inch. Well, isn't it time to stop that craziness and allow yourself to let go of that burden of obligation, so that you, and with a lighter load, and eventually my hope is, for me, eventually there's no load anymore. It's just I kept releasing and releasing and releasing, and then I decluttered to the point where there's lots of white space. There's lots of room for me to be creative, lots of room for me to move, and to feel that instead of life being a struggle for survival, that it's this great vat of thrival, where each time I think a new thought and create something different, I'm bubbling over with joy. I'm bubbling over with exhilaration and a zest for life that I certainly had in my teenage years and my 20s, but kind of lost over the years. And so it was to reclaim that. So here I am now. This is 11 years after the cancer diagnosis, and I'm happy. I feel great. And some of that has come because I quit shooting on myself. Does it still happen? Oh yeah. I mean, the old programs are still there and they still want to play, but I override them more often than not. And if I feel the resentment rising, or I feel some resistance in some way and I'm really reluctant, then I question that and say, okay, what is it about that? I have this to-do list that's longer than next week. How much of that really is necessary? Do I have to do any of it? Well, no. And sometimes I'll just go ahead and cross things off the list without doing them, because I look at it and say, nah, that's not that important. I don't really need to do that. Well, that's a nice to have, but I don't want that. So then I have this little list that's easier to accomplish. So it is as simple as that. And of course, you are magnificent enough to be able to do that. So I really want to encourage you this week to start examining all the things that you feel obligated to do, all your shoulds, all your have tos, and all the things that you say, no, I can't, I couldn't do that. I'm not no. Examine those, because I think you'll find it's not true. It's not the truth of who you really are. Who you really are is more magnificent than that. And if you're going to move through the fear of cancer right into thrival, into your version of heaven on earth, then you may choose to let go of some of these things that no longer serve you, and choose again, choose something different, and choose it from your full awareness and consciousness. If you're getting something from these videos, The Healing Call of Cancer, you can subscribe to my channel, and as they pop up every week, you'll get an alert, I think. The other place you can find these videos is on my app, The Magnificence Mentor. It's a free download. Just become a free member, and all the content on there, both Healing Call of Cancer and Tea with Sue, is there for you to uplift, inspire, give you a laugh, give you something to think about. we all need that in this day and age, because what's going on is a little bit hard for all of us. So until next week, take good care. Just focus on your magnificent self, because you are that magnificent. Bye for now.